Hi, everybody. Welcome. Oh, that was Giancarlo making a sneak appearance. Welcome to actNOW. I'm Julianna Forlano. On the show today, we have an amazing show for you. First of all, we're going to have the headlines with Professor Richard Wolffe. That's right. He's joining us for the headline segment. We're going to do an economy headlines, which is fitting for having an economist on. First of all, Charlie Munger ominously warned that people have no idea what's coming when it comes to the economy. And then we're going to be discussing the economic impact of the potential Russian sanctions that Biden is announcing right now and the possible war that's going to follow that. And then the rent is too damn high. We'll be addressing all of that with Professor Wolffe. And as if that wasn't enough for a great show, a champion for justice running in Nevada, Amy VILELA, is joining us live on the program. We're going to be talking about the environmental crisis, healthcare, and whether electoral politics is even useful anymore. All of that. Plus, we're going to be doing our action rundown where we take a look at the campaign to make medication affordable. The Make Meds Affordable campaign launched last week with Senator Elizabeth Warren and activist Ady Barkan. That's coming up at the end of our show. First up, are you strapped in? Have you hit the like button? Have you left us a comment yet? I know we just started, but I do like to read them and see them, and it also helps our algorithm push the show forward, push progressive talk forward. So do that if you can. Strap in. The headlines are up first. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the headlines. I'm Julianna Forlano. Professor Richard Wolffe is going to join us. We're talking about how Charlie Munger made an ominous warning about the coming doom in the economy, about what the economic impact of Russian sanctions are going to be, and how the rent everywhere is too damn high. Joining me in this edition of the headlines will be Professor Richard Wolffe. Here it comes. Hello, Professor Wolffe. How do you like the image? We've beautiful. Got the Wolf of Wall Street here.
Just beautiful. I'll have to start wearing a tie.
We are we stole from the Wolf of, well, I didn't make it. Someone on someone's team. Do you know where this came from, Professor Wolffe?
No, I've not seen this, but increasingly these things are coming to me by people creatively doing all manner of things.
The Wolf of Main Street, a takeoff on the Wolf of Wall Street. Obviously, we are speaking with Professor and economist Richard Wolffe. Okay, let's get right into the headlines. First up, Charlie Munger, the major investor, partner to Warren Buffett in Berkshire Hathaway, and a man probably pretty far away from you on the ideological spectrum, put out a video yesterday suggesting that terrible times are ahead for our economy and that most people have no idea what is coming. You and I recently had a chat, and you told me that in the circles where you travel, economists from every different ideological zone are saying that we are in a very precarious situation and that no one can really see a way out. I'm going to play a snippet of Charlie's video, and then I want your unfiltered opinion of what he's saying and your thoughts about what's happening. Let's hit the Charlie video.
We're in a big bubble. Can you elaborate on that, and how is this likely to play out?
When you print money on the scale that modern nations are printing it, Japan, the United States, Europe, etc., we're getting into new territory in terms of size. There's never been anything quite like what we're doing now, and we do know from what's happened in other nations, if you try and print too much money, it eventually causes terrible trouble. And we are closer to terrible trouble than we've been in the past, but it may still be a long way off. I certainly hope so. When Volcker, after the 70s, took the prime rate to 20% and the government was paying 15% on its government bonds, that was a horrible recession. Lasted a long time, caused a lot of agony. And I certainly hope we're not going there again. I think the conditions that allowed Volcker to do that without an interference from the politicians were very unusual. And I think in 2020 hindsight, it was a good thing that he did it. I would not predict that our modern politicians will be as willing to permit a new Volcker to get that tough with the economy and bring on that kind of a recession. So I think the new troubles are likely to be different from the old troubles. You may wish you had a Volcker-style recession instead of what you're going to get. The troubles that come to us could be worse than what Volcker was dealing with and harder to fix. Think of all the Latin American countries that print too much money. They get strongmen and so forth. That's what Plato said happened in the early Greek city-state democracies. One person, one vote, a lot of equality, and you get demagogues, and the demagogues lather up the population, and pretty soon you don't have your democracy anymore. I don't think that was a crazy idea on Plato's part. I think that accurately described what happened in Greece way back then, and it's happened again and again and again in Latin America. We don't want to go there. At least I don't. We've done something pretty extreme, and we don't know how bad the troubles will be, whether we're going to be like Japan or something a lot worse. And what makes life interesting is we don't know how it's going to work out. I think we do know we're flirting with serious trouble. I think we also know that some of our earlier fears were overblown.
And some were not. Professor Wolff, your thoughts on the doomsaying and what you've been hearing in the circles you travel?
Well, let me start off by saying, and I mean no disrespect, I really don't, that Charlie Munger in this video and in other things he said proves once again that if you're rich, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're smart. To repeat,
I mean no disrespect, but I'm just saying.
Right? Yes, that's how it's done.
Yes, very
look,
good.
He says over and over again, we're heading for trouble. He's right. He says over and over again, it's because we're printing a lot of money. Well, that's silly. Here's why it's silly. We've been printing money for the last umpteen years now on a record scale, and we haven't had an inflation and we haven't had a collapse. Number one. Number two, even if you believe there's some sort of link between printing money and a collapse, you then only have to ask the obvious question, why are people who know the history just as well as Charlie Munger not asking and answering the question, why are they printing money like this if it leads you into trouble? I mean, the obvious question is what's going on in a system, whether it's ancient Greece and Plato or Latin America or the United States. And I should point out, we're printing money at a rate that exceeds what has happened in Latin America or ancient Greece right now. So I agree, yeah, we're headed for trouble. We're already in trouble. But the notion that we can all think about it in terms of the printing of money, I mean, that's a bizarre, narrow basis on which to conduct any kind of analysis.
So the trouble that we're in has less to do with the fact that we're printing lots of money and more to do with what?
Well, for example, we have unspeakable level of inequality in our society. For 20 years, we've been giving all of the growth of wealth to the top 1% of the population and making the rest of this country staring at a disappearing American dream, at a handful of people who regale us with spending unspeakable amounts of money in order to have 11 minutes in space for an afternoon. I mean, we are watching something that isn't so far away from the ancient pharaohs, and the spectacles they gave to people. So if I were Charlie Munger, I'd be saying not so much printing money, but the obscene inequality that we're producing is a much more dangerous trouble that we're heading into.
Yeah, they weren't. So the people that you're speaking to who are all agreed that we're heading into trouble of being whatever ideology, they're just thinking of different ways we're heading into trouble. No one's all in agreement that it's the inequality that's the problem, or?
That's right. They don't agree on how we got into this situation, and they don't agree on how we ought to get out of it. But it's already interesting, I think, that people as different, and you're right about that, Juliana, people as different as Charlie Munger and myself would be agreeing that we're in dangerous territory, that troubles are coming, that our politicians don't have whatever it is they had back then with when Martin was the head of the Fed and so on. These are correct observations that we're in deep trouble. But when I listen to how they explain how we got there, that's kind of silly at this point. That's their ideology. They want to blame the government. They never want to blame a capitalist economic system, the inequality it generates, the instability of these cycles that come every few years. They never want to talk about that. They want to talk about the bad government, the bad policy of the bad politicians. It's a cheap out. And it indicates that they don't want to take the question.
Well, they've been making a lot of success, financial success, off of the system that we already have. So I doubt they'd want to upend the apple cart that provides them their apples.
Right. But then the risk is they're having a wonderful time. The economy is hollowing out underneath them. And then when it crashes, they're going to take us all down with them. That's why we have to develop our own analysis and our own program to deal with this. We rely on them. They're showing us that's a mistake.
I love having you on the program because, people just are aware. People in the street are aware that things are not right. You've got your inflation, you've got your potential war, and that's going to lead us to our next story. And just knowing that when you come on, you give a reality check to people who are like, yeah, this is not right. And this is not just me. So I appreciate that. The second story I wanted to hit today is the bipartisan effort to have Biden impose crippling sanctions on Moscow in the hopes it'll stop his likely attack on Ukraine, which looks like it's already in progress. What Biden is out there announcing it right now as we speak. What boomerang effect do you think if we get to sanctions? What do you think they'll have here at home and around the world?
Okay, let me comment on two levels, if you may, if you allow it, Juliana.
Please.
Number one, the sanctions. This is 75% political theater for the United States. Sanctions don't work. We have been sanctioning Russia, just to remind everyone, since 2014. That's 8 years ago. We hit them with all kinds of sanctions. So did our pet poodle, the United Kingdom. They did it too, had even less effect than the Americans. It was punishment for the Russians invading Crimea, that strip of land that goes in, gives them access to the Mediterranean and so on. What did those sanctions accomplish? Did the Russians leave Crimea? Absolutely not. Did the Russians stop their program of trying to get security, which is what they claim they're after, by having a friendly environment on their borders? No. And that's why we're in the pickle we're in now. The idea that sanctions today will do what sanctions have never done, especially in recent time, makes me wonder what kind of political theater this is.
Go ahead.
Number two, the United States in the last 20 years twice went thousands of miles beyond its border, invading Afghanistan, invading Iraq on the grounds that their security was threatened. Nobody in their right mind believed that, except here, since you don't have to go to two of the poorest countries on earth if you're the richest and the most powerful to protect your security. But that's what the United States said, and that's what the world accepted. You know why? Because the United States could do that. Here is Russia, and I have no brief for Russia. They deserve all kinds of criticisms. But here is Russia right on its own border, not having to airlift its troops anywhere, saying a bunch of stuff about its own security and wanting to move. We are not the country in a position to talk about how horrible that is, because we just did that and we're
Right.
still not done with it.
Yeah.
Now, as to the effects, here's the immediate effect. The price of oil is going to shoot up. And you know what that's going to mean? That the people in California who are already spending over $5 a gallon to fill up their cars are going to be spending a good bit more. And so are we in the rest of the world. Europe is going to have to scramble where to get the energy, which is already driving an inflation. Britain's inflation is 7.8%. Ours is currently 7.5%. All of those inflationary numbers are being given a boost by all of the disruption that will follow sanctions. And then let's remember, the Russians have counter sanctions. They did after 2014. There's no reason to expect they won't do that again. They are one of the largest players in the global oil market. And here's an irony. Because the price of oil goes up, and because Russia's economy depends on exporting oil and gas, the irony is the trouble caused here by the exchange of sanctions drives up the price, which makes the economic cost to Russia less by the minute as the price of oil goes up. And therefore, they have that in their planning, that this is a move which, with or without sanctions, they can afford. You put it all together, this is a cheap theatric to distract Americans from Mr. Biden's political problems at home and to distract the people of England from the absurd chaos of the Boris Johnson clown government that they have.
It does seem that, we already have the inflation sans the cutting off of fossil fuels. I mean, just to draw the lines, of course, if oil goes up, the price of food goes up. The price of anything you have to have delivered goes up. The price of everything goes up. So, we're cold here in the Northeast right now. The price of heating your home will go up. I've said a million times, Professor Wolff, if we had a green energy economy, we could avoid a lot of these wars.
That's right. And the irony, let me give you one irony just to underscore your point. Amazon has a service called Amazon Prime. If you give them a bunch of money every year, they'll deliver all this stuff to you, whether you need it or not, that they've been able to get you to buy. They raised the price this year from $119 to $139. It's a wonderful thing because it's an increase of 20%. Right? Or nearly so, way more than the rise of inflation. And that, of course, that's being passed on to you, this inflation, with a little extra for Amazon, because they needed having a billionaire CEOs and making more money last year than anyone else. If a company as well positioned as they are is using the situation to jack up prices, imagine what your neighborhood business is being forced to do as they cope with all of this.
And it's like a sneaky thing that they do, right? Because you pay that at the beginning of the year, and then you think when you're about to buy something from eBay, you're like, yeah, but I already paid at Amazon the shipping. So, and then they call it free shipping with Prime. You've already paid the shipping. You prepaid the ship anyway. It's just like, are we dumb? They always think that people are so stupid. Anyway, so here's the question. Back to your idea or your thoughts about political theater. I had the same thoughts, that it's just basically like, well, we have to pretend we're doing sanctions because what we really want to do is prop up and give some money to the military industrial complex. And, war is very lucrative for some segments of this economy. What effect would actual war have on our economy? Would it prop it up?
Well, in other countries, you could say something in answer, well, the war will stimulate. But we've been running a war-based economy, whether we have a war or not. After the Soviet Union imploded in 1989, there was loose talk about a peace dividend, right? The idea was, now that we don't have a superpower, Russia, aimed against us, we can take it easy. We can realize the defense industry went crazy. We immediately had a war on terror, which would last how long? Forever. I mean, it's the ultimate dream of the defense industry. So we can't say that a war will mean more orders. It will, but they're already getting more orders than they know what to do with. Our expenditure on defense and defense-related issues is already over $1 trillion, which is a staggering proportion of our tax revenue and everything else. Will some more happen? Yes, but I think that will be
Oh, you're frozen a little bit, Professor Wolff. Are you still there? Can you still hear me?
To us in higher oil and gas prices, higher food prices.
Professor Wolff, you're freezing on me a little tiny bit. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay, great. You froze
Yes,
on me
I can.
just a tiny bit. But this is kind of a tough line to walk for people on the left or people who are anti-war, whatever party you. I mean, I can't see belonging to one. Anyway, I can't see belonging to one party and being anti-war when half of those candidates are pro-war, mostly hawks and whatnot. Anyway, it's tough to walk the line. You have to respond proportionally and try to deter without escalating insofar as that's possible. Is you think this is basically just political theater so Biden can say, I've done everything I can, and now let's send in the troops?
I don't think he's going to send in the troops. It's beyond words to me. To be honest, my expectation is that this will go away exactly like the activities around Crimea did. And that's not because of Mr. Biden. I don't want to blame him. The United States is not in the position it once was. It doesn't call the shots around the world the way it once did. Russia has a close alliance now with China. You put those two countries together, they have 5 times the population of the United States. And because of China, they have the latest technology across the board. You're in a new world, and the United States will huff and it will puff. But those little piggies have got a brick house, and it ain't going to blow over anytime soon. And everyone in the world knows that you could not sustain with the American public a costly war for a Ukraine that the majority of Americans could not locate on a map. That's how little they care. And you know something, given the history, given what's plaguing and troubling the American people now, I have no criticism. Ukraine is the last thing they want to worry about. And Mr. Biden, therefore, has to ratchet up the theater because it's a theater that's all, a painted backdrop. Behind that, nothing.
Very interesting. So just retouching on that one question, you answered it, but I want to give you opportunity if you wanted to expand. If there are sanctions, which I'm guessing there are by now, it's 2:25. He was announcing them at 2. How is that going to ripple? You're saying the major ripple effect of that is going to be seeing an increase in fossil fuel costs, and then the ripple effect of that, meaning the cost of our groceries are going to be higher, the cost of everything else is going to be higher.
It's a little hard this early to say, because it depends on how much the theater is going to require Mr. Biden, because you can expect he'll be criticized for whatever sanctions he puts in, that they're not enough. Then we have to guess at what the Russian response will be, what kind of...
Oh, you're a little bit frozen, just a little bit frozen.
Of the so-called supply chains all across the board.
We're already having problems with supply chains, and now we're having problem with your video. I'm sorry to say. I think you may have gotten kicked out, and I'm not sure if he's going to come back in. Giancarlo, there he is. Hi, you're back.
Yes.
Oh,
sorry
well,
about it. I'm not having any trouble that I can see here, but
no worries. I'm sure it's the man who doesn't want us talking about these things and telling people what's really going on. Moving to our last story before you get completely shut out of the process here. Rent is out of control. You've got an article. This is out of Florida. Rents are reaching insane levels across the U.S. with no end in sight. Can you talk about what is going on there, and what are your thoughts here?
Well, I mean, the best way I can think of to explain this to people is we live in a society which celebrates markets as if they were some gift from God as an institution. Well, markets cut both ways. It's like a sharp knife. For certain purposes, it's a great thing to have. For other purposes, it could kill you. And markets are exactly the same way. Markets in the current situation are governed by a rule, and that rule is charge as much as you can get away with, or if you like, raise the price as high as the market will bear. That's how we teach it in economics courses. Well, what do we have now? We have small landlords across the country who've just been through a very hard 2 years of economic crash, pandemic, all the rest. They weren't able to raise their rents then. They were barely able to collect them. They couldn't evict people. They couldn't threaten people with evictions. So they've taken it on the chin. Now they can catch up. And they're raising their rents to catch up to whatever it is that they had to go through for 2.5 years. Number one. Number two.
But who's left to rent at these high rates? I mean, this woman that's pictured had to move in with a boyfriend. Like who? That's
the result. You are squeezing the American working class. People should understand that when you raise the rents higher than the rate of inflation is being raised, prices in general, you're just moving wealth. You're moving wealth out of the accounts of renters into the accounts of landlords. It's an enormous shift in the distribution of wealth. It's part of what's going on across the United States capitalistic economy, in which the rich are getting richer, right, and the poor are having to live with their mother, their grandfather, their cousin, their aunt, because afford the rents.
I was wondering
either
about
you
this.
Let this go or you don't. How would you avoid it? If the private profit isn't there, the government builds the housing. There's no great difficulty in this. You just have to make the political decision to do it, which our Democratic and Republican parties will not do.
That's interesting. We had some feedback when I announced what we were talking about on the show today on Twitter, talking about rent control and if that's actually a real answer. The tweet itself was, by disincentivizing would-be landlords from buying rental properties, they'll be likely bought back by banks and Blackstone et al. Will it be okay as mom and pop landlords and Blackstone fail to make repairs due to high costs, due to rent control? Have we thought rent control through? But you're not suggesting rent control. You're suggesting a competition in the market brought by the government bringing in housing. Is that right? Oh, you maybe can't see me anymore.
I can hear you and see you now.
Oh, great. We can see you too. The question I had, I don't know, were you able to hear the question about rent control?
No, not about rent control.
Oh, okay. So just briefly, one of the questions that came in was about rent control and how it's not exactly the answer. But you're not proposing rent control. What you're proposing is a competition by government housing to the regular housing market. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. That's what other countries have done. That's what the United States has done in its past.
So in order to keep renters.
Yeah, the only amazing thing is that Americans seem to be allowing the political system we have simply to rule out certain options as if they weren't there. I mean, I can give you a couple of examples. Over the last 2 years, we've had unbelievable unemployment. We could have solved it by having the government hire people. Then they wouldn't have had to be unemployed. We would have gotten the output they could have helped to create. We could have therefore paid them a proper salary. They wouldn't have lost their homes. They wouldn't have had to stop paying their landlords the rent that was owed. We could have had a different solution if you had allowed the government to play a role here to fix this system. We are ideologically opposed, and the result is we don't have even a discussion about these options as if they weren't there. And that's a loss for the American people.
Right. And we allow the right to take over with this discussion as if rent control is the only thing that the left is proposing. We'll have to talk more about this later, Professor Wolff, because we're out of town. My next guest is here. I do thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate you joining me on these headlines. Everyone needs to go watch Economic Update on YouTube. You can go to Democracy at Work on the internet. Support Professor Wolff's work. Thank you again for coming on the program with me.
Thank you, Juliana. Sorry for whatever these interruptions were.
Not a problem. I appreciate you coming on. Any word you say is worth its weight in gold. So thank you so much.
You're very kind. Thank you.
You're watching Act TV. We'll be right back with our segment with Amy VILELA. Looking forward to that so much. In 2020, Amy VILELA led the charge for Bernie Sanders' landslide victory in the Nevada caucuses, and she's fought in the trenches of the political revolution to elect progressive champions, like Cori Bush, for example, and Jamal Bowman. Now she is running a 100% grassroots, people-funded, people-powered campaign for Congress in Las Vegas to represent Nevada's 1st district. This past weekend, she spoke as bluntly as possible about the existential emergency of climate change that's affecting not only her district, but her district specifically. She was introduced by none other than Nina Turner, who is running in her own state of Ohio. Instead of me introducing Amy, let's let Nina introduce her. Roll that beautiful Nina footage.
All that we love is on the line. That's it, and that's all. This is really simple. This is not complicated. And Mother Earth and the entire ecosystem cannot afford to have folks try to make up their mind about the existential threat that climate chaos is causing, not only in this great nation, but also in the world. So it is time, it is past time to have leaders to stand up and decide whose side they really are on. And one of the reasons why I am here in this great state today is because I know what side my sister Amy VILELA is on. She is on the side of the people, unequivocally. One of the beautiful things about Amy VILELA and also my sister Cori Bush is we have traveled this country together, standing up for what is just, what is right, and what is good. See, we didn't need fancy titles to understand that when you see injustice and inequity, you must stand up and you must speak up, that you must put a little extra on your ordinary. That is what we have been doing together all over this country as we travel together in support of Senator Bernie Sanders, who really got this progressive kind of thing started in the 21st century. So here we stand, sisters together, being the champions that are necessary, having in common that mama spirit, because ain't nothing like the mama spirit. And when the mamas get together and decide that things must change, things are going to change. Only all that we love is on the line. Every single person that has had the opportunity to speak here today, to stand in solidarity, not only with Amy VILELA, who is the conduit to this, I consider us missionaries on a journey to make some crooked paths straight, but understanding that her very courage to step into this race, to run and declare that things must change, that all is on the line, is not just for the people of the 1st district, it's not just for the people of this great state, it is for the people of the nation. And to be bold enough to put herself on the line and her family on the line for all that is just, all that is right, and all that is good. We're not playing games. Mother Earth is sending us a signal that all is not right. And we don't have forever to do something about it. We don't have forever to stand up to the corporatist interests who absolutely don't give a damn. This is really about money, 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 at the expense of everything else. It is about money. It is about a type of greed that suppresses and depresses not only human beings, but the ecosystem, the animals, the flowers, everything that depends on us as human beings to get this right and to get this right quickly. So we don't have time to wait. We don't have time to play around. We don't have time to flirt with the status quo. We need a leader who is not ashamed to say so, that she stands up for the poor, the working poor, and the barely middle class in these United States of America. And part of that is protecting the climate, the environment, because if we don't take care of Mother Earth, we have nothing else. If we don't take care of Mother Earth, all the other issues that animate us, all the other justices that we are fighting for will be mute, because we will not have an Earth.
The best possible introduction. Amy's joining us on the program today. Amy VILELA, thanks for joining me here today. Let's bring her in, and there we go. Hi.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good.
Happy Bernie Sanders Day in Nevada.
Yes. I've got my feel the burn. Oh, hold on. I'll widen out my shot here. The feel the burn is always here. Yes.
Yeah, we're celebrating that victory. It surely was wonderful for us here in Nevada. We really showed how far we've come on progressive issues. And this June, we're like celebrating it. And we know in this June, we're going to have another victory. We're going to win this.
Yes.
And just want to put a shout out there. Anybody that wants to help us on this, in the spirit of Bernie Sanders Day, you can throw $22 to amy.vegas.
Yeah, or more. That's fine too.
Yes, yeah.
I've got the website down there, amyvilela.org. There's ways to donate here. I was first introduced to you, Amy, when I was covering Bernie Sanders' run in Nevada, where you spoke from the stage there and you told the tragic story of your daughter having been turned away from a hospital emergency room for a perceived, not even a real, but a perceived lack of health insurance. And she subsequently died because they didn't treat her. I always feel like anytime I talk to you, I want to give you my deepest condolences on that loss. And thank you for turning that grave injustice into your so far from that lifelong fight for justice for all of us. So I do appreciate you. And you're just coming from a position of internal power that I don't think will be able to, the forces that are trying to keep you down, I don't think they're going to win against that. So
No.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
We're all in this fight together. And I know that was my last words to Shalyn right before she passed was, she was not going to die in vain. And, I've always said it all along, I can't save my daughter, but I can surely work to save others and their loved ones. And, really that purpose and that, giving back to your community is really what saved me and helped me move forward. And I never would have thought I'd been in politics. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I like that even better. You weren't like, I'm going to be a politician and, do that.
I wasn't from the right pedigree. I wasn't from a wealthy. I was, raised in poverty. I'd been divorced. I was a single mom. I had my car repoed. Go down the list, but
no, that's good. You were unhoused. I know about this already because your housing policy is exactly what is needed in this. Under this, we can just go to that under this, what's happening now. So in 2020, a huge number of Las Vegas families faced that same reality of being unhoused during the pandemic. And of course, it happened again after the 2008 financial crisis. Talk about what's happening in Las Vegas and of course across the country around housing and what could you do as an elected official from the halls of Congress to help some of this alleviate some of the suffering.
Well, here in Las Vegas, we get hit some of the hardest. We were hit hardest with COVID. We are hit hardest when it comes to unemployment just because of what, our industry here is in Las Vegas. And right now we're seeing rents go through the roof. Some reports were saying 25%. People are getting rent increases of hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And then we have a shortage of affordable housing. We have some of the least available affordable housing in the nation. And when you have hundreds of people that are applying for one home, not only are our landlords getting rich off of the fees, but they're asking for things like credit scores up in the 670s. They're asking for not only a deposit that equals the rent, but the first and last month rent. And they're
might as well buy a house.
Right.
You can't do that either, but
we're also having people from outside the state and people with cash coming in, buying up all our housing. So people honestly don't have anywhere to go. Mm-hmm. And so we need to be addressing this first, on a grander scale. We could be addressing this with a Green New Deal, right? And building affordable housing, making sure we have jobs and people having income and addressing the issues that are within Las Vegas. We can also have a tenant's bills of rights, right? We can make sure that we are taking care of people's rights when they are renting and not being able to be evicted without cause, not having to check boxes, whether or not they've been evicted before. There's so many things that we need to address, and we need someone who's going to work around the clock on this issue. When my good friend Cori Bush was out there on the steps, I was very surprised that no one from Nevada was joining her, seeing how we are really in this situation here in Nevada. It's because they don't have that lived experience.
I noticed that you don't mention your, the person who's in the seat now who you're hoping to unseat's name. You didn't mention that person's name yesterday, and you're not mentioning here. Is that a thing that we're not doing? I mean, I just hosted this progressive summit, and none of them mentioned the name of their opponent, which I think is, I think we need to do it. I think we need to call them out on a national level for being less than we had hoped.
Right. Well, for me, it's really what I want people to get out of this is really about the issues. Most of the voters don't even know her name. When we're knocking doors, we've been knocking since October. Majority of people in the district don't even know her name. So the vast
So she hasn't done very much to get name recognition that people would be thrilled about whatever she's doing. Right.
And she's had the strongest, Democratic seat in the state for over a decade. And yet, whether it's a midterm or a presidential election, she is consistently delivering less than 20,000 fewer votes than her northern counterpart up in CD2, which wins and landslides by the GOP. So she is not. There's an enthusiasm gap, and there's a lack of engagement with the everyday person who really needs to feel like someone is listening. They're actually going to fight for them in Congress. If you don't feel like anything's going to change, then why are you going to show up to the polls?
Yes. Amy, we spoke, or excuse me, you have been on the program before, and we did speak about this before, but we spoke earlier in this interview a little bit about what happened and what got you to start looking into a political career. Let's talk about healthcare. In the last run, it seemed like the people in Nevada's first didn't find your moral call for a just healthcare system compelling enough to put you over the top. But now that COVID has shed light on what is exactly going on, are you seeing people waking up to what you have been trying to tell them?
I mean, I saw that when we had the caucus for Bernie. I mean, there has been a real shift. And I always tell people, I hear and I see what's going on online, and I hear comments coming back, and people are like, they were losing or we've lost, but listen, every time we run, every time we're out there, every time we're talking to people, and all the people on the front lines who are out here being activists, we are building that infrastructure and getting people to be aware of what's possible. I mean, I remember before my daughter died, when Bernie announced in 2015, I remember them talking about universal health care. I didn't know what it was. And, when she passed and I started really researching this, and this is just when we started talking about universal health care, I was so shocked when I saw a video of Bernie in the year she was born, talking about how people were dying from a lack of health care. And I remember saying to myself, oh my God, she's not a tragedy. Shillen's not a tragedy. She's one of tens of thousands every year that are dying, right? People have been saying this. We cannot tire out. We have to continue on. I mean, I don't care what they throw at us. I don't care what's happening in there. I know that we can do this. We just have to keep on. Every year that passes by, there's more and more people dying. We don't have the luxury to sit back and be worried about what's happening in the past, elections or whatever. We just have to keep on building onto that. And we've done a really good job of that in Nevada, on the front with the frontline organizers, as well as people within the community. Those organizations, those friendships have not gone away since the caucus. And we've continued to push out and let people know there is better available. And there are people who are willing to actually use everything at their disposal to fight for those policies, not just show up when it's time to vote.
Yeah, I noticed as we were talking to these progressive candidates across the country, some of them have had to run more than once, but the ground game has built up so much name recognition now. And then, that space has opened up in certain races because of all the hard work that was already done. So you've already been building this for quite some time here. I was very happy to hear you talk this weekend about, there was no minced words, neither yours nor Nina's nor Cori Bush's, who was also there at the event, about the existential threat of climate change. Can you talk about what's happening in your district and what corporations and corporate Dems in power are willing to allow to happen there that you are not?
Well, right now, as many probably have seen, our state has been on fire and it's running out of water. literally, we are running out of water.
Yeah, that's not good.
And while this is happening, we are right now in the midst of fighting back against a bill that is in Congress right now that was introduced by my opponent that will actually take federal lands and give them into private hands. And it's a giveaway to developers. So they're talking about increasing the size of Las Vegas by the size of St. Louis. And while we're in the middle of this crisis, and there's been a precedent in this state that, they've been consistently taking federal lands and giving them into private hands so that they can, make profit off of developing them without any kind of, call to attention to what's happening in our environment. And we right now are trying to say, what, this time I am standing up for the Green New Deal, which again, my opponent does not. And we want to set a precedent by showing that we are going to fight this bill with people power. We're not going to allow this to happen anymore. And, one of the neighboring cities, Boulder City, they've done a great job in showing us, how to do controlled growth. And they're going to be one of the ones that are impacted, but they're not the only ones that are going to be impacted. This will not be felt evenly across the board.
I don't really understand why anyone would want to build something in a place where there's not going to be any water. Are there very soon? Are they hoping for, are they doing, hoping for a rainstorm? Like what, how can they make money if no one's going to want to live there soon?
Right. But this is all about the almighty dollar. It's all about the short-term returns that they're going to get. Right. And if we look at, who's donating to my opponent, you're going to see that it's going to be the developers. It's one of her largest donors. Right. So when we talk about the why behind this and who's going to, they're not worried about who's going to live there and what kind of conditions they're going to live in. They're worried about what kind of profits they're going to get when they sell these homes. Right. Mm-hmm. And our representatives are not acting with the urgency that's required with the crisis at hand right now. It's all about short-term greed.
I still don't even get, are people not following this issue? Who would buy a house in a drought-stricken area that has the longest drought in 1,200 years or something? I just read something. It doesn't, it still doesn't seem like a good investment to me, Amy, to buy. I mean,
right.
Whatever.
Our representatives are not using their platform to talk in depth about about what's happening in our environment. They're not using their platforms to talk about the Green New Deal. Then people are busy. People are working multiple jobs here in Las Vegas just to make ends meet, right? It's up to people who are in leadership positions to make sure they're talking about these issues with their constituents. And that isn't happening, again, because of the almighty dollar. And that's what, one of the jobs that I have, even as I'm running, is using my platform to bring these issues to light. Not only when it comes to, the environment, when it comes to, Medicare for all, when it comes to immigration, all of these issues, they want to talk about the easy things. I can't tell you how many times I've seen in the newspapers recently that Nevada is back. Las Vegas is back. It's back for who? It's certainly not back for the working people in Las Vegas. Right. Yeah. It's not back for, the barely middle class, working class about to be poor in Las Vegas. It's back for the casinos and the people that are getting wealthy off the backs of our people, our constituents in this district.
Oh, boy. Okay. Across the country, 28 Democrats are not running for re-election in the House. Do you see this as an opportunity for more wide progressive victories?
It's funny you say that, use that word.
No?
My opponent is she's trying to malign me saying I'm an opportunist. And I think we do.
Yeah, I heard about that. That is.
Yeah, I think we do have an excellent opportunity. We have an opportunity for people in this district and across the nation to vote for bold progressive leaders. We need more in Congress. Corey kept on mentioning over and over again, she needs help. There's only a few people. She needs help in Congress. We need to be able to have people who are willing to sit on those steps, who are willing to go out there and push the buttons and talk about issues that other politicians are not willing to talk about, because then they'll be called out on where they've been and what they haven't been doing, more importantly, right? We need people who are not bought and sold in there. They're going to work around the clock. Again, it doesn't mean just showing up when it's time to vote. That's not enough. The urgency of now of all these issues is not enough. When we have over 40,000 people a year dying from health, a lack of health care, showing up to vote if it comes on the floor is not enough. We have to use everything at our disposal. When it comes to the environment, our children and grandchildren and their children are not going to see a return back to where we are now environmentally if we don't start acting now.
Which still isn't that great. I've been alive for a while, and I remember it being better than this. Yeah,
exactly.
So,
I always tell people, we need people that have this lived experience, because if you don't know what it's like to have to be evicted, or have to choose between gas and electric for your, how you're going to pay for the bills, for me, having car insurance for a long time was a luxury. I mean, I could barely even pay to get the gas to get to work, but there's a lot of forces coming in on the progressives. They're certainly singling me out. They know that we have the excitement in Nevada. They know that people are ready to go to work here in the state. We are seeing so much excitement and so much support, and that's so important. But, in order to get there, I'm going to need help, and I'm definitely going to need donations. We're going to have to put up a large, defense coming down to the primary day. So, if you live in Nevada's 1st district, I need your vote, but I also need people's support, not only from in district, but across the nation financially.
Yeah. And share this video also to get people the understanding that, when I did the Progressive Caucus thing where we showcase candidates, and I want you to be on the next one, Amy, is to the feedback I got was, oh, we didn't know there were so many progressive. No, of course you don't. It's by design. It's not like they're giving you tons of time on MSNBC.
Right, exactly. And it's been very surprising to me it's not surprising, actually. I shouldn't say I'm surprised by it anymore. I mean, part of me hopes that people, believe in democracy and would let the people decide. But the amount of effort that's going to be going into trying to stop a select handful of us, myself included, is enormous. And I'm ready for the fight. And regardless if they throw at me, my why is so personal. I always tell people, unless you can resurrect my daughter from the dead, you have nothing to offer me. I'm going to go in there and fight like none other for the things that really would make a difference, not only for constituents in CD1 in Nevada, but also across this nation, because pain is pain and life is too short. And we have to have people in here who are actually fighting to take away, needless death, needless pain, and needless suffering. So I'd be missed again if I ask people, listen, I'm going up against some of the biggest fighters.
I'm going to ask them for you, Amy. Go to amyvilela.org. It's VILELA.org, and make a contribution, and then tweet everything and tell everyone about Amy. I want to, we have a segment of the internet. I don't really think it's ours so much, but the internet has a segment of people who say that they're progressive and they're on the left, and then they tear down our progressive leaders in Congress as if they should be able to wave a wand and stay ideologically pure and not have to actually do the job that they're in, which is politics. That's the job. Right. What would you say to people who are either losing faith in the electoral process, or the people who are maybe have been disappointed by, I'm putting it nicely, by, they're disappointed by concessions made by the squad? And your thoughts about that? What would you say?
I understand why that they're frustrated, and all of us are so passionate about getting these things done. And when we talk about the issues, I mean, these people are feeling them firsthand. I understand. I mean, I am so frustrated. It's been 7 years since Shalyn died. I think about this every day. The time it takes. But we can't do it. There are so many people that are in Congress right now, and there's only 5 or 6 people who are actually, in there trying to fight for these things. Listen, we don't have the luxury of sitting back calling each other out. I know they have ideas on, not running in this party or that party, but listen, not every state has access to third parties, or we don't have the luxury to wait until all of the circumstances that they wish were happening were in place to wait for those to run. Because in the meantime, there's 40,000 Shalyns dying every year. I don't have the luxury to wait till all of those things are in place and everything's great, and we were all, say, okay, now it's time, and we feel like it's the right party, it's the right place, it's the right. I don't have the luxury for that. Because I know there is 40,000 other families, and other young women and men and loved ones dying as we argue about this. Because until we get more people in, until we actually get in there and we start fighting en masse, they're continuing. So everybody hold on. They want us to tire out. They want us to fight each other. I mean, like, you go back to the civil rights movement. It didn't happen overnight. And there was people that had different opinions. We cannot tire out and become so disengaged with each other because we feel like there's such a different way of doing things that we stop fighting, because there's real repercussions for doing that.
Amy, I look forward to celebrating your victory with you. And I really do. And thank you so much for coming on the show. Please let us know if there's anything else we can do. We will continue to cover your race. I do encourage everyone to go get your wallet out, like right now, not like later.
Yes.
Don't put it on your to-do list. Like, go do it. I mean, she's fighting the man. This woman.
Yes. I mean, like, it is the 2-year anniversary of Bernie. So do it. And for that, $22, any amount that you can do would be amazing. I mean, every little bit counts. It helps us get out to more doors and more literature printed.
And you're close. I mean, this is not like some long shot thing. You've been at this.
We have to win. We have to win by May 1st. That's when early mail-in starts. We don't have till June 14th, or, we don't have till then. We have to win by May 1st. It's closer than what people think. And we need your support. I want to go to Congress and fight for the everyday working class American like I fight for my family. And I need your help.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. And I will continue to encourage everyone to go to amyvilela.org. We're not against fundraising for candidates that are that support we are not afraid or ashamed of being outwardly progressive. We don't pretend. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. You're watching act.tv. Go get your freaking wallet. I mean, what are you waiting for? I don't know. It's just incredibly moving. And I do think that power that she is coming from is not going to be suppressed. And I want to put my mommy power behind her and support her. As soon as I had my own kid, I was like, how am I going to stop this kid from being eaten by capitalism? That has been my massive mission ever since she was born, even though I had pretty mission driven before then. But if there are mommies watching out there, or daddies or grandparents, it is very, this woman is trying to get elected to help us be able to do that, to protect our kids from being eaten by capitalism. My words, not hers. But again, amyvilela.org. You're watching act.tv. As if that wasn't enough. I know we're going overtime, but if that wasn't enough, I've got an action rundown segment for you that I think you're going to love, coming up in a moment. The beauty of the internet, right? You can just keep rolling if the show is good. I mean, I'm on fire from listening to Amy Vilela. If you're just tuning in now, go back, watch the segment. Amy Vilela, running for Nevada's 1st district, was on our show very few moments ago. But guess what? Coming up now, I've got an action rundown for you. There was an event to make medication affordable, a campaign launched by Senator Elizabeth Warren, who we haven't talked about in quite some time, and 80 Barkin activists who we have talked about recently. That's coming up next in our action rundown. I am Julianna Forlano. Check it out. The Make Meds Affordable campaign launched this past weekend. Here's a fact. Joe Biden and the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Xavier Becerra, they have the power right this second, without Congress, to do something about Big Pharma's greed. So the activists, both in the elected office and out on the street, are pushing Biden to do an executive action to bust pharma monopolies and lower drug prices. Stroke of a pen, baby. That's all it takes. And lives are on the line. That's why folks are out in the streets campaigning to make medication. It's called Make Meds Affordable. That's the hashtag, Make Medication Affordable. I got some video of that action, and this thing is ongoing. So we'll put a pin in it. We'll keep our eyes on it. This is Senator Warren of Massachusetts talking about the launch of the campaign and just outright asking President Biden and Secretary Becerra to use their authority to take action to lower drug prices without Congress. Did you know that they could do that? I did not. And I don't think anyone else did either. But thanks to these folks, now we do. Let's take a listen to Warren.
So glad that the Make Meds Affordable campaign is launching today to put these issues front and center in America. I'm excited to join their calls to President Biden and Secretary Becerra to use their existing authorities, things that Congress has already authorized them to use those authorities to lower drug prices and to crack down on the monopoly power of giant pharmaceutical companies. Americans have been waiting long enough for government to take action to lower drug prices. Enough is enough. It is time to act right now.
I love how Senator Warren, she used to be a school teacher, and you can totally hear it in her voice. She's like, that everyone knows that they could do right now. I love that. She goes on, of course, to give statistics, which are very startling, actually, about American healthcare. Take a listen.
Average American spends more than $1,300 a year on prescription drugs, more than the citizens of any other developed nation in the world. And in fact, Americans pay nearly 4 times more on average for drugs than similar countries. 1 in 4 Americans struggles to afford their prescriptions, and 3 out of 10 adults did not take medications as prescribed last year due to the cost. That is shameful. No one should have to choose between affording a life-saving medication and putting food on the table or a roof over their head.
Yes, I am with her on that. All right. Also at the event, Erin Jackson Hill, executive director of Stand Up Alaska, was speaking about the astronomical cost of inhalers and her own experience trying to use this medication. Here she is.
Inhalers are ridiculously expensive. And honestly, I know from personal experience, they can mean the difference between life and death. For the times when I couldn't get my inhaler, I would try to make my old one last, using it until there was not a molecule of medicine coming out to open up my airways. If I got really desperate, I would borrow someone else's if they were available. This is not a way to live. You should not have to choose between your mental health and not being able to breathe.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Also, we have Adi Barkan, founder and co-executive director of Be a Hero, explaining that President Biden and Secretary Becerra have the legal authority to lower these drug prices without waiting on Congress. I think that's the take home from this launch, that he could do it right now without waiting on Congress. So either do it or give us an explanation as to why. Otherwise, we're just going to assume it's because you're a corporate pharma sellout. And you wouldn't want that, President Biden. The urgency to act, by the way, after 2 years of a pandemic is like looming largely over our heads as we head right into the midterms and Democrats are trying to hold the majority. Question, why would voters vote blue if their lives are literally not materially improving? What are Democrats doing to ensure these votes? This is the morally right thing to do. It's politically wise for the president and for Becerra to take action now to lower these drug prices, especially when he hasn't been very successful in getting them lowered any other way. Here's Adi Barkan.
President Biden and Secretary Becerra already have the existing legal authority to lower drug prices. They don't need to wait on Congress. Build Back Better sought to address prescription drug prices, but with the fate of the legislation up in the air, it is even more critical that Biden act now to make drugs competitively priced and affordable. Not only would this be the morally correct action to take, but also the politically wise one. Heading into the midterms this year, we will all have endured more than 2 years of a pandemic that has caused lasting damage to every aspect of society. Democrats barely squeaked out a victory in the last presidential election, and now we're headed for a big fight to hang on to our thin congressional majorities. And in the calculation about who would best represent them, voters will question whether or not their lives improved under Democratic rule. We cannot take civic participation for granted. We must give people a reason to head to the polls.
Absolutely. Well, this is a good reason to head to the polls, to have your medication be affordable. There's no reason pharmaceutical companies should be taking home these enormous profits. There should be salary. How about a salary cap? Just put a salary cap on there, on that executive bonuses and privileges. I'm for that. I think that's a good idea. Or how about if the companies pay their fair share of taxes? I'm sure that's not happening. That on the up and up. Anyway, I agree. Let's just make the meds affordable in whatever way we can. This is, again, a campaign launch, so you can follow it. It's going to keep on rolling and keep on going. The hashtag on the internet's Make Meds Affordable. That's it for today's Action Rundown. You are watching act.tv. All right. Did you like the show today? I mean, that was great. I loved it. We had Professor Wolf. We had Amy VILELA. We had the Action Rundown. I like watching what people are doing from the street. And I'm getting more and more jazzed up about presenting to the publics, you all, exactly the fact that things you're not really seeing on MSNBC, CNN, Fox, nothing. Of course, the truckers, they get a lot of coverage. But everybody else doesn't get a lot of coverage. But there's a lot of progressive stuff going on. It's not time to sit back, as Amy said. Amy VILELA, someone to go and support. Coming up on the show on Thursday. Oh, I've got a lot of stuff, including Egberto Willies. He's a host of another radio program, and I've known him for a very long time. He's going to join me to do the headlines. He's down in Texas, has an excellent point of view. I don't know if you know him already. And we got a couple other stories, couple other things. Some people, I don't want to name names because they haven't marked their calendar quite yet, but some people you may have heard a video from today, maybe coming on the show. You can take a wild guess in the comments. Anyway, you're watching act.tv. I'm Julianna Forlano. You can follow me on Twitter at Julianna Forlano for my own tweets. If you want to follow act.tv, they're on every platform, including the one you're watching. So don't forget to share us. Of course, we are not taking corporate ads, so we don't get picked up that much by the algorithm. So we need your help. Definitely hit the share button, hit the like button, leave a comment, and put a page marker. I don't know. Whatever you're doing from wherever you are, we appreciate. See you next time. We're out.